So I'm Kathy Kuntz, Executive Director of Cool Choices, and I'm delighted you can join me today for this webinar about how behavior can fit into energy efficiency efforts. I've been looking forward to talking about this for a while, so I'm excited you could join me for this. As just a bit of background, Cool Choices is a nonprofit. We work with businesses and whole communities to motivate people to adopt sustainable practices. So we kind of live in the space of changing people's behaviors. We very much live in that space. One of the primary ways we do that is through an online engagement tool. We go into organizations or communities, customize the platform of actions, and then roll out a program where people get points for the sustainable things they do on a daily basis. Fundamentally, what we're doing there is we're facilitating conversation and we're showing people how their actions and other people's actions add up. So there's a lot of empowerment strategies behind what we're doing there. And, you know, fundamentally, when we're successful, our partners say things like this. So we got an entire employee population moving in the same direction. And really, that's what energy efficiency programs are on a quest to do too. They want an entire target population to adopt specific kinds of behaviors, whether that's program participation or turning off lights when they leave rooms, kind of thing. So there's this way that there's a really strong analogy there. Very often, though, when I say behavior around energy efficiency, folks, they think of one thing and one thing only. They think of home energy reports. They think of the kind of model where a utility is saying to customers, here's how your usage compares to similar homes in your community. This is a chart from my own utility about that. And certainly, social norms are a powerful way to touch people around their energy usage, but they're not the only way, and that's not even the only way to leverage social norms. So today we'll talk about a bunch of other things that your efficiency programs can do to kind of hit those behavioral levers. That essentially my big message for you is so much more is possible. There are so many more ways you can use behavioral insights to make your program stronger. And I want to start with the view from neuroscience, because I think sometimes when I start with the social science side of this, people go, oh, I don't know about that. That's not how I think I work. So let's talk about what the people who think about our brains think about this. Sorry, I'll come back to that. The neuroscientists, how they think about our brains working. And so when people are put in situations where with little diodes on their heads and we can see exactly what's happening in their brain, this is how it works. It starts with us feeling. Okay, the feeling part of our brain responds first to stimuli. And then we act. We respond to that stimuli. And then, and only then, the thinking part of our brain creates a rational piece of the story. It's really clear when you look at what neuroscience is finding that this is about feel, do, think. Now, this happens in milliseconds, so it's really past our capacity to observe as the person who's making those decisions. But what's really important there is to know that people are responding before they're going through all the rational pieces. And one of the implications of that for an efficiency program is to really be thoughtful about when and how you ask people to predict their behaviors. Because really what we know is people aren't very good at predicting their behaviors. And particularly when you think about the neuroscience, that makes sense. How could I predict my behavior if I don't really even understand it, if it's happening before I'm being in that rational space? Which is why I think it's really important. One of the things to kind of think about through everything I'm talking about today is the value of really testing messages, of doing A/B tests of what you're doing to see which thing are people really responding to, not which thing do people think they'll respond to, because that's really lovely, but it doesn't matter. What matters is what people actually respond to. And so the more you can integrate testing, real testing, rather than kind of asking people what they think they would do, the stronger you're going to be in, and the better position you're going to be in to really advocate for efficiency programs that are leveraging insights effectively. So that's kind of the big insight picture. I want to talk, though, some about kind of rules of thumb that are always going to help you. What do we know about behavior that can help you increase participation in your energy efficiency programs? As we think about this, I really urge you to think about your program as a series of behaviors. You know, it's not that people participate in a program and install a high efficiency dishwasher or a LED lighting system or a photovoltaic system on the roof. There's a series of decisions involved in each of those. There's a series of behaviors around information seeking, decision making, implementing those decisions. There's kind of a lot going on. And so because there's always a lot going on, kind of the first and foremost rule is to make it easy. What can you do to make it easier for people to do the things you want them to do? And, you know, here's an illustration where you've got these shelf shouters telling people, this is nutritious, pick this. You know, anytime you can have your product at eye level, that's making it easier for people. I remember, so my own involvement in the energy efficiency world extends back 25 plus years. And, you know, it was a huge victory for us to move the compact fluorescents from foot level to eye level. I'm always excited now when I see these really prominent end cap displays of LEDs, because that means it's getting easier for customers to do the right thing. They're not having to push their way through all the things they don't want. Similarly, how easy is it to find a contractor who will talk about the high efficiency option? How easy is it on the commercial or industrial side to find the specified equipment? How do we make it easy for folks to do this? And, you know, one of the ways you make it easy is by making the efficient choice a default. So industrial facilities can make it easier for high efficiency equipment to end up on the plant floor by specifying that's what we order, by having kind of defaults in their system. There's really compelling data around organ donation telling us that you know, people really do follow those signals of the defaults. The example there is the comparison of Germany and Austria. So two countries with pretty similar histories, populations. In Germany, you opt in to donate organs. So you have to check a box that says, yes, I will do this. In Austria, you opt out. So you check the box to say, no, I won't do this. In Germany, organ donation rates, depending on what year you look at, they are in the 12 to 15% range. In Austria, they're over 96%. And partly what that tells us is there's about 70% of the population that probably is just going to follow whatever the default is here. So why not make the default what you want it to be? So there's this, you know, whole strategic thing about how do you make it easy for people to pick the thing you want them to pick? How do you not create roadblocks for them picking what you want them to pick? And, you know, this I always think in the world of energy efficiency, because we've got utilities involved, we've got kind of these complicated systems, we very often, my best example of this is always forms, that we have questions on forms that are just way more complicated than they need to be. I remember years ago having a conversation with someone about, we were requiring people to put their meter number on this particular form. And I asked something about how often the number was accurate, and staff told me it was never accurate. And I was like, why are we why are we giving them the hardship of trying to figure this out? How many people don't apply because they can't figure out their meter number? You know, what are you dropping off at each of those roadblocks? And really being, I think, as an energy efficiency manager, you have to really think about how can I be the slayer of roadblocks? How do I eliminate everything that's making it hard for people to participate in this? So there are the overt roadblocks, like complicated forms. Then there are other things we do that we're well-intentioned about that also create roadblocks for people. And one of them is giving people too many choices. There's a famous research study on this involving jam, where they went into a grocery store and one day had 4 kinds of jam people could sample and then purchase. And the next time they had 16 kinds of jam people could sample and purchase. And when they compared the purchase rates from the day with 4 jam to the day with 16 jam, the day with 16 jam had only 1 in 10 of the purchases of the day before, so 10% of the purchases. Partly because when you're offering people 16 kinds of jam, they're thinking, oh, I kind of like that one, but maybe I like that one better, and I should come back and try that one, and they just run out of, I'm thinking there probably were some people who left the store and didn't buy anything because it was just way too overwhelming. In our intent to give people every possible option, we paralyze them with too many options. So if you've got a program where you're providing customers with a list of 50 contractors who could do something for them, that's crazy. Nobody that you know has time to research 50 contractors. Figure out a way to give each of us a list of 4 that's fair to everyone on the list, so that it's this kind of manageable thing. Give me, similarly, don't tell me 100 ways I can save energy at home. I don't even have capacity to read 100 ways. Tell me 3 ways that are good for me, 5 ways tops. Really limiting that choice makes it easier for me to move forward. After I do 3 things, you can tell me another 3 things. Certainly there are 100 things you can do, but you don't want to give them all at once. In our program, when people start out in the Cool Choices game, there are about 6 things they can pick between. And every day more things appear, but they're playing for a while before that deck gets very big, because we don't want to overwhelm them. So all of that was about making it simpler. There's also a lot about how we leverage social. And we talked about home energy reports as a way to say, this is what your peers are doing. Sometimes the best you can do is, this is what your peers value. People in our community think it's important to save energy. That's why we started this program. That in and of itself is a lever to use with folks. Really think about how are you saying people in our community value this? Heads up. There are a number of other things you can do, though, too, that really leverage how we think and how we interact socially with each other. And a really good one is about recognizing accomplishments. And this is equally effective on the individual and the corporate side. Okay, 2 really amazing things happen when you call out accomplishments. So when you call out a business for doing an amazing job of reducing their energy usage, 2 things happen. First, other businesses notice and potentially get more interested in taking action too. ABC Legal got all that attention for what they did with their lighting system. We could do that with our lighting system. Why haven't we done that? Let's do that. The other thing that happens, though, is inside ABC Legal. When you call them out as a leader, they feel, largely of their own manufacture, social pressure to maintain that leadership position. So when you recognize me for doing something, you recognize me for turning off my computer consistently when I leave at the end of the day, I feel a little pressure to keep turning it off so people don't think, oh, Kathy got recognized and didn't even deserve it. Now, in reality, other people probably don't even remember I got recognized. This is all in my head. But we've got really good evidence that it is in people's heads. And so when you recognize, you not only create that outward ripple that gets others to aspire to recognition, but you reinforce the practices for the person or entity you're recognizing. And the same thing works with testimonials. You know, the more you can have people in the community, businesses, individuals, asserting that this is what they did and this is how it benefited them, the more powerful that becomes. It's a really powerful lever to be pushing there. Another social lever here is public commitments. And this is public commitments. You know, lots of programs use commitments or pledges, and too often programs do that in an anonymous way, which is largely ineffective. So the value of a commitment is the sense of accountability I feel to my peers and community. If you want commitments to work, you want people to put their name to what they're committing. This is exactly why 20 years ago, when we were starting a lot of the anti-smoking campaigns, we were telling people to tell a friend when you're going to try to quit. Have a friend join you on an exercise program. You need to make that commitment public in some way, because then it's much easier to stick to. And again, this has to do with consistency. If I tell you I'm going to do something, somewhere in the back of my head, I'm a little worried that you're going to ask me if I'm going to do it. So that creates that opportunity there. The final kind of consistency thing to talk about is how you leverage past actions. This is an area where I feel like there's a ton of opportunity for efficiency programs that isn't being exploited. So it's pretty clear from behavioral psychology that because we really want to be consistent, you know, we'll agree to do additional things if we feel like it's important to do them to be consistent with our past practices. So there's a clear analogy here in the efficiency world. If I purchased an Energy Star dishwasher, I'm probably much more open to persuasion about LED lighting. But efficiency programs need to make that case, and they need to make it in a way that's targeted to what I actually did. So what would that look like? It might look like email to me saying, hey, people like you who purchased Energy Star dishwashers are also seeing a lot of value in Energy Star LED lights or high efficiency furnaces. Click here to learn more about what else you can do in your home, kind of thing. So a message that says, okay, we know you did this. People like you who did that are also likely to do these other things. Right now, we're not very effectively, I've not yet seen any data from a utility that's very effectively leveraging past actions. There's a ton of opportunity here. So it's really something to think about. How do you get that past action to multiply into new actions? Then I want to kind of talk about a few high-level kind of good rules of thumb. And the first is that losses are motivating. So very often in the efficiency world, we talk about people's potential to save. And saving is sort of gaining money in the way we think about things, as opposed to losing money. And what research tells us is that the joy I feel at finding $100 is equivalent to the pain I feel at losing just $10. So there's a tenfold difference here in how I think about losses versus gains. I have to gain 10 times as much for it to be as kind of joyful as the loss is painful. Which means that you have this potential to do some really strong language and imagery about, are you throwing money out the window? Are you burning money with the current habits you've got or the current equipment you've got? And certainly we've seen firsthand in programs that when you use images like this, people get a little squirmy. Nobody wants to be the guy who's burning money. That's crazy. Nobody wants to be the company or the employee who's watching the company till while this is happening. So there's a pretty compelling thing there. And just thinking about how do you shift that language in some of what you do, even on an experimental basis, to go, these are the losses that you're seeing. This is money you're not getting to spend on things you might really want to spend it on. Another kind of good trick in that realm is thinking about limited time offers. That, humans are motivated by scarcity. And so telling me that for a limited time, I can get an extra incentive for doing this. For a limited time, this is available to me, can help move people from inaction to action. Deadlines are helpful to lots of us. So thinking about, are there ways you can create kind of special offers that get people moving? Now, you don't want to do that in a way that disrupts your market allies, but very often, certainly my experience is that lots of those allies are very accustomed to using sales to draw in people, and they understand the value of a limited time offer, and so you can create that pretty effectively with them. So that works really well. The thing you should avoid doing that very often, unfortunately, it feels like I see efficiency programs doing is don't reinforce the negative. So I said losses are motivating, but if you frame this as everyone is wasting energy, remember we're social creatures. We follow the social norm. When you tell me everyone is wasting energy, I hear that it's okay to waste energy. It's no big deal. Everybody's doing it. It's probably hard to fix. And I just put that on the list of things I'm not going to think about. Always want to present your norms in a way that motivate people to be part of the solution. And sometimes the reality is everyone is wasting energy. In those cases, I would switch to an opinion-based norm. I would say everyone thinks saving energy is important. 80% of people think this. 70% of people support the city's recycling policy. Something that gives them here's a majority that's part of the solution orientation. The other kind of don't I want to hit on here briefly is shaming. So some of us have a tendency to think, well, if I just call out the people who are doing the wrong things, that will get them to change. And again, there's really clear evidence that shaming doesn't motivate people. Shaming people motivates those people to avoid you in the future. A wise anthropologist once said to me, shaming only feels good to the people who are doing the shaming, and they're not the ones you need to convert. So you don't want to be shaming people into participating. Indeed, what you want to do, what I feel like the most important thing that you want to do is you want to make people feel good about what they're doing. You want to be congratulating them for the smart things they're doing to reduce their usage, to be part of the solution, to set an example for others. All the ways you make that kind of a very genuine good for you. And when you do that way, when you say, it's great that you bought that piece of equipment. It's great that you installed insulation in your attic. Did you know there are 3 other things you could do to further reduce your losses? Kind of thing. There thinking about how you do all of that. And so there are all of these ways that behavior can expand who participates in your program, and gets each of them to do more when they are participating, which is a pretty exciting thing to think about. It's hard to get people into the program. Wouldn't it be great if they all did 4 or 5 things as participants rather than just one thing? And with that, I want to open things up for questions. If you've got questions about what things I covered today, we are glad to hear them. You've got that GoToWebinar box, so if it's closed, you hit the little orange arrow, it will pop open. You'll be able to write in there. A question about, I hear you on complicated forms, but how do I convince others that the form is too complicated? And again, I would suggest some kind of controlled test. Can we try the form without these questions in this one instance? And then can you look at participation rates and go, wow, we got a lot more forms when we didn't have those things on there. How are we using that data? Is it really worth this % difference in participation? I think hard data is your best friend in terms of getting some of, particularly around making things easier. You know, a way to think about that is really that everything that happens between someone going, oh, I could change out our refrigerator for a more efficient model, and actually having the new refrigerator in the kitchen, everything in between that is a potential point of friction that reduces the likelihood of that being a high efficiency refrigerator. As an efficiency program, what you really want to do is grease those skids, not create more friction. And so the way you want to be really mindful of how to make that happen. Oh, fabulous. Someone just made a note that leveraging past actions at the latest Behavior, Energy, Climate Conference, so that's BECC, for those of you not familiar with it, there was a presentation that highlighted research findings that support, that's interesting. There was okay, I should read the whole question before I start talking out loud about it. So, leveraging past actions, all good. At Beck, there was some research about saving and loss that suggests that maybe some people are motivated by saving, not loss. So they're going to send me that. And you probably can look at the Beck conference page and see that as well. The saving loss research is based on a pretty big body of evidence, so it will be interesting to see how this other research fits into that. But there's also potential that some of those things shift a little bit over time. That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I always love new research on these things. I am not seeing other questions. So with that, given it's almost exactly 12:30 and I like to be done by then, I am going to close. Thanks so much for participating in today's webinar. You've got my contact information there if you've got other questions or thoughts later. And thanks again, and go off and do amazing things. Thanks for everything you do to make change happen.